Welcome to Modern Crime Scope, where we uncover the most gripping true crime stories, shocking celebrity scandals, and hidden mysteries from around the world. Each video is crafted like a documentary, simple, suspenseful, and packed with twists that keep you hooked until the very end. If you're fascinated by secrets, lies, and the stories behind the headlines, you're in the right place. David Beckham's spotless reputation collided with the shocking claims of his alleged mistress, a woman who stepped out of the shadows with a story powerful enough to shake the foundations of fame, family, and fortune. The story of David Beckham's alleged mistress began not with a dramatic revelation, but with a quiet ripple that disturbed the smooth surface of his pristine public image. For years, Beckham had been more than just a footballer. He was a global brand, a fashion icon, a husband, and a father who seemed to embody perfection. His carefully curated image of loyalty and success left little room for scandal. Yet, all it took was one small spark to ignite curiosity, suspicion, and eventually obsession. The spark came in the form of whispers. Murmurs passed around in hushed tones at exclusive parties, whispers that slowly leaked into the wider world. At first, it was only gossip, the kind of chatter that attaches itself to every famous figure. But unlike ordinary rumors, this one grew teeth, sharper with every retelling, and soon journalists began to take notice. The first hints appeared in obscure gossip columns. Stories vague enough to be overlooked, but pointed enough to suggest something sinister. They spoke of late-night meetings, unexplained absences, and someone lurking behind the spotlight. The mystery intrigued the press, who were always hungry for cracks in the facade of fame. Beckham's marriage to Victoria had long been scrutinized, their relationship constantly under the microscope. But this rumor felt different. It wasn't born from casual speculation. It had the weight of someone determined to be heard. Slowly, the name of a woman emerged, not a celebrity, not a glamorous model, but an ordinary individual who suddenly became the subject of extraordinary attention. She was anonymous at first, hidden in the shadows, her identity carefully guarded. The allure of the story came from the contrast it created. On one side stood Beckham, polished, admired, a man whose career had been defined by discipline and precision. On the other stood a faceless figure, whose claim threatened to undo years of careful reputation building. This imbalance gave the story its power. For the press, it was an irresistible opportunity, the chance to expose the cracks in a seemingly flawless life. Headlines began to circulate in greater numbers, questions were asked with greater urgency, and fans who once idolized Beckham found themselves hesitating. Could the man they worshipped on the field have been leading a double life away from it? The pressure mounted as photographers chased every movement, watching Beckham's public appearances for any sign of unease. Victoria's silence was dissected endlessly, her smiles scrutinized for hidden meaning. Meanwhile, the woman at the center of it all stayed silent, letting speculation grow louder. Each passing day, without her stepping forward, only deepened the intrigue. Was she preparing her story? Was she being silenced? Or was it all a fabrication cleverly planted to sell newspapers? The suspense came not from what was known, but from what was left unsaid. The absence of proof became proof enough for many, and speculation filled the void of truth. What had started as a whisper had now become a growing storm. It hovered above Beckham's perfect life like a dark cloud, threatening to break at any moment. The stage was set, and the world was waiting for the woman behind the whispers to finally reveal her face and her truth. The woman at the heart of the scandal was not the kind of person anyone expected. She was neither famous nor accustomed to life under scrutiny, and perhaps that was what made her story so compelling. In a world filled with glamorous figures linked to celebrities, this woman stood apart because of her ordinariness. She had lived quietly until her name surfaced, and suddenly she was thrust into a narrative that gripped the media. Her life, once invisible, was now magnified under a harsh light. What she claimed was simple but devastating. That she had shared a secret relationship with David Beckham, away from the adoration of fans and the cameras that followed him everywhere. The press began digging into her background, desperate to uncover every detail. Neighbors, acquaintances, even former co-workers were asked to describe her character. Some painted her as quiet and withdrawn, others hinted at ambition and a desire for more than an ordinary life. These contrasting accounts only fueled the mystery. People wanted to know what kind of woman could possibly tempt a man who seemingly had everything: a successful career, a marriage admired around the world, and children he was fiercely proud of. The imbalance of their lives made the story almost unbelievable, yet the very absurdity of it gave it power. As her claims slowly spread, fragments of supposed evidence began to appear. Photographs of Beckham in unexpected places, receipts from hotels in cities where his travel schedule hadn't been publicly announced, and records that suggested private meetings. Each new piece of information was analyzed endlessly, debated on talk shows, and splashed across magazine covers. The woman was still silent, choosing not to directly confront the rumors, but her silence was its own form of confirmation for many. To the public, the lack of denial suggested there might be truth behind the scandal. The alleged relationship was described as both emotional and physical, a connection built on moments stolen from the glare of fame. She portrayed Beckham not as the global superstar adored for his discipline, but as a man longing for escape from constant expectations. If her version of events was true, it painted a picture of vulnerability behind the polished image, a side of Beckham few had ever imagined. This revelation alone was enough to capture attention worldwide. The more the press pursued the story, the more entangled it became in contradictions. Some sources swore her claims were fabricated, while others insisted they had seen Beckham with her in places that didn't align with his public appearances. The line between truth and fabrication blurred so heavily that no one could be sure where reality ended and rumor began. And still, she had not spoken directly, leaving the world suspended in unanswered questions. By the time her identity became known, the scandal had already taken on a life of its own. She had gone from anonymous figure to headline name, her image circulated as much as Beckham's. In her silence, she became both villain and victim, a woman accused of seeking fame while also painted as someone holding dangerous secrets. It was no longer just a whisper or a rumor. It was a story that threatened to rewrite everything the public thought they knew about David Beckham's carefully built world. When the woman finally broke her silence, the world was watching closely. After months of whispers, speculation, and a flood of tabloid stories, her voice was the missing piece everyone had been waiting for. She chose a setting that was carefully controlled, not a screaming tabloid headline, but a measured interview where every word was recorded. Her demeanor was calm, her tone deliberate, as though she had been rehearsing this moment for a long time. What she revealed was not just a simple affair, but a complicated and messy chapter that threatened to redefine Beckham's image forever. She began by explaining how their paths first crossed, insisting that it had not been planned but had grown out of unexpected circumstances. According to her, Beckham was charming yet surprisingly private, a man who seemed weary of the constant attention that surrounded him. She described moments where he confided in her about the pressures of fame, about the loneliness of hotel rooms, and about the strain of balancing a public persona with private struggles. For the public, this image of Beckham was startling, because it clashed with the flawless image that had been constructed over decades. Her words painted him as human, flawed, and seeking comfort outside the perfect world he presented to fans. The details she provided made it harder for people to dismiss her claims as fantasy. She spoke of specific places, exact dates, and even described objects he had given her. Tokens, she claimed, of a relationship that went beyond casual encounters. Though she presented no physical evidence during her first interview, her confidence and precision gave her story a chilling sense of credibility. It was this very precision that captivated audiences and fueled an even greater frenzy. The public began to argue over whether her revelations were the result of careful truth-telling or a carefully constructed fabrication designed to wound. What made her story even more gripping was the emotional depth she claimed existed between them. She described Beckham not as a distant celebrity, but as someone who leaned on her during times of stress. She painted herself as both confidant and companion, someone who saw the side of him that fans never did. According to her, their bond was more than just physical. It was about vulnerability and escape. This narrative divided opinion sharply. Some believed her, arguing that her testimony felt too raw to be a performance. Others dismissed her as an opportunist, suggesting she had crafted her tale with just enough truth to make it believable. Her decision to speak unleashed a wave of consequences. Overnight, her words dominated every headline. Commentators dissected her every sentence, critics questioned her motives, and legal teams began preparing countermeasures. Beckham himself remained silent, but the silence only made her story echo louder. She had shifted the scandal from vague suspicion into a concrete narrative, and with that shift, the stakes grew higher. By the time the interview ended, the woman was no longer a faceless rumor. She had become the scandal's central figure, the one who dared to challenge one of the world's most polished reputations. Whether she was telling the truth or fabricating a fantasy, her voice had changed everything. The world no longer speculated in shadows. It speculated openly, and her words had made sure the scandal would not fade away easily. The aftermath of her revelation erupted into a full-scale media war. The moment her interview went public, news outlets around the globe scrambled to claim the story as their own. Tabloids ran with sensational headlines, some proclaiming the end of Beckham's golden image, while others dismissed the mistress as a liar seeking attention. Television panels brought on experts in body language, psychologists, and even former athletes to analyze every frame of her appearance, dissecting her expressions and pauses as though they were clues in a criminal case. What had begun as a whisper now dominated front pages, social media feeds, and dinner table conversations across continents. For Beckham and his family, life became a fishbowl. Paparazzi camped outside his home, following his every move with ruthless persistence. Each photograph was scrutinized for signs of stress, distance, or hidden meaning. If Victoria appeared without her wedding ring, speculation exploded. If Beckham looked tired or distracted at an event, it was interpreted as confirmation of guilt. Even their children, usually shielded from publicity, were dragged into cruel speculation about the future of the family. Every smile, every step, every public gesture was reframed through the lens of betrayal. The woman at the center of it all, once an anonymous figure, found herself caught in the chaos. Overnight, she went from being invisible to being the most talked-about woman in the world. She faced threats, online abuse, and accusations from critics who dismissed her as manipulative. Yet she also received support from others who believed she was exposing an uncomfortable truth. Media agencies hounded her for more interviews, waving promises of money and fame. The more she appeared, the deeper the story became. As each new claim she made added fuel to the fire, she insisted she had proof, messages, receipts, and even photographs. But when pressed, she never revealed them. This absence of hard evidence created a dangerous void, one that allowed suspicion to thrive on both sides. Lawyers became the hidden players in this drama. Rumors swirled that Beckham's team had prepared lawsuits to silence her, while her representatives hinted that she was under pressure to keep certain details secret. Whispers of non-disclosure agreements and hidden settlements only intensified the sense of conspiracy. Some believed she had been paid off and silenced, while others thought she was waiting for the perfect moment to release evidence that would shake Beckham's world beyond repair. Each day brought new speculation, and the line between fact and fiction blurred until nobody could tell the difference. For the media, the lack of closure was gold. The scandal became a never-ending cycle of headlines. One day, Beckham was portrayed as a victim of lies, the next as a man whose carefully polished life was unraveling. The truth became secondary to the spectacle, and the scandal transformed into entertainment for millions of onlookers. The longer it dragged on, the more it became clear that this was not just a story about a footballer and his alleged mistress. It was a battle of perception, a war of narratives where truth itself was the casualty. As time passed, the scandal began to shift from breaking news to something darker and more unsettling. The frenzy of headlines slowed, but the shadow of suspicion never lifted. Beckham continued with his public life, attending events, supporting his business ventures, and maintaining the image of a devoted husband and father, yet everything he did was seen through the lens of the accusations. Supporters insisted he was a victim of a calculated attack, while skeptics argued that the absence of proof did not mean innocence. The mistress, once at the center of every headline, gradually disappeared from public view, but her story lingered like a ghost that refused to fade. Some claimed she had been silenced, pressured into retreat by legal threats or financial arrangements. Others speculated that she had realized the toll of constant exposure and chose to vanish before the story consumed her completely. Her silence was as powerful as her revelations had once been. The lack of resolution frustrated those who wanted a clear answer, but it also kept the scandal alive, feeding endless theories. For many, the unanswered questions were more compelling than any proof could have been. Behind the scenes, the damage was undeniable. Beckham's reputation, though not destroyed, was altered. The flawless image that once made him untouchable was permanently cracked. Even those who defended him with unwavering loyalty could not erase the memory of the claims. Every future headline about his success carried with it the unspoken reminder of the scandal. For Victoria, the weight of public speculation was relentless, and though she never spoke directly about the matter, her silence was interpreted in countless ways. Was it strength, denial, or quiet suffering? The public filled the silence with their own stories, each one adding to the myth of the scandal. What made the story so haunting was its incompleteness. No proof ever surfaced. No final word was spoken, and no one could say with certainty whether the mistress had told the truth. The absence of closure left a gap that people continued to fill with imagination and doubt. Some believed that the truth was buried under money and influence, hidden away to protect a powerful image. Others thought the woman had fabricated everything, feeding off the hunger of the media and the public's fascination with scandal. Neither side ever won. The years rolled on, but the scandal never fully died. It became part of Beckham's legacy, not as a confirmed fact, but as a lingering rumor that trailed behind his fame. The mistress remained a figure both forgotten and unforgettable, a name that surfaced whenever whispers of betrayal returned to the spotlight. The power of the story lay not in what was proven, but in what was never resolved. It reminded the world that even the brightest lives can be haunted by shadows, and that mystery can be more enduring than truth. In the end, the scandal stood as a reminder of how fragile reputation can be, how quickly admiration can turn to doubt, and how some stories never find an ending. The world moved on, but the question remained, unanswered and eternal. Was it a silenced truth or a carefully crafted lie?